Well, speaking today as a Public Service Commission and also the Minister of the Cabinet Office, Kate Lord-Brennan, this story about the millions and millions of pounds that have been given to people who have left government just seems incredible. And this has come up from an FOI, hasn't it?
It has, and the information that was published yesterday is data really from 2017 onwards about the number and the value of settlement agreements over that period of time. And prior to that information coming out, it was already a matter of concern for me, as I think it would be for anybody who's looking at the financial costs, and perhaps also concerned about the reasons as to why such settlement agreements might arise.
Now, you've known about this. It's only become public because of the FOI. So have you been dealing with this behind the scenes, putting things in place to stop this happening? Because it does seem completely out of control. I mean, to a layperson, seeing these sort of numbers, it's incredible. Yeah,
well, certainly the Public Services Commission have started already now looking at policy for guidance to accounting officers of government departments and also the Office of Human Resources, which, as you probably know, that there's already a review going on into that anyway. So that had been, certainly on my mind and something that, I've sought to progress, because clearly this is a sort of a management function, but the various matters that might arise prior to a settlement agreement being put in place, clearly what happens before then in terms of processes is important. So, I've sought to progress that, just being mindful of it generally. However, of course, I wouldn't have been, party to, events and figures perhaps, going back over a number of years since, certainly before I was in post and position. And a lot of this stuff is obviously, it's delegated down at officer level. But what you want clearly as the ministers and MHK is to seek assurance that actually there's proper usage, and there could actually be very good reasons for the use of settlement agreements in any large organisation, and government is a pretty large organisation. So
who decides what people are going to get paid to go? This is at level of obviously just civil servants who make these decisions. How do they come up with these figures then? Is there an actual booklet that says what to do? Or?
Well, I can talk about some of the process. Some of the process on it, and I think in many ways, it's actually helpful that information such as this comes to light, and I do want to give assurance to people that it is being looked at in various ways, and I can talk to you about some of those ways today, because actually it boils down to things like accountability and performance management and process in the end. But in effect, there might be various reasons why an employee might need to exit an organisation, and that could be might be because there's performance or disciplinary matters, or for a whole range of issues where actually it makes much more sense to go via a conciliated settlement agreement as opposed to another way to exit the organisation. So
to a lot of people, that doesn't sound right. If someone's not doing performance or they're not doing their job, you sack them. They go. Not have some money will zip you up. Presumably, this is all gagging as well coming into this, isn't it?
No, there could be lots of different reasons for settlement agreements. So just to kind of say about how the process is handled under the Equality Act, the process is that that has to be so it's effectively Manx industrial relations that are involved, and this is left to that's on an advisory side of things, really, for brokering things, but also you've got these are management decisions at officer level that happen upon taking appropriate advice from the Office of Human Resources. So to me, from a sort of Public Services Commission and ministerial position, I want to have greater assurance, and certainly there needs to be a reference point for things happening in this way. And I think that will help greatly in terms of reducing the use of these agreements, which should be the exception, not the norm, and they should not be used to sort of replace process either in terms of management or human resource, policy or intervention. But there could be, and there has been, good reasons for using settlement agreements, which is when there's mutually agreed resignation. Now, in those cases, there has to be a case made that it will be for the better interests of the organisation in terms of efficiency and longer term savings. So there could also be redundancy and things like that. So it's really important to not take those figures and assume that they are all for a certain purpose. There could be multiple reasons why a conciliation
and I take that,
agreement
but
takes
let's
place.
just deal with the ones that people are thinking of. And me being sceptical, and I go back to this gagging thing quite often. And I know people who it's happened to, they've gone, but they're not allowed to ever talk about anything because that's part of the agreement. Yes, you take that on board. Potentially some of that money has gone into keeping that person quiet.
No, usually the reason, so there may well be a non-disclosure arrangement as part of a settlement agreement, but usually the figures that are arrived at are related to, sort of payment for. It could be holidays, it could be for loss of office effectively in order to bring that matter to a conclusion, which actually could be the better and the right thing to do for various reasons. But as I say, I can't emphasise enough that it's not the case that every settlement agreement falls into that category, if you like, and certainly from certainly some of the information that I've seen and requested in the past. Also thinking, kind of what on earth is going on here? In every single instance, it absolutely must be wrong. But actually, I've had to have my eyes open. That actually, in some cases, it actually is the better thing to do. But also, it's not always the cases where it's just about exiting an employee. It could be for efficiency reasons or to facilitate change. And so, down the line, it could be the case that we see. Mutually agreed resignation arrangements for change purposes, because to reflect a changing employee.
Yeah, how are you going to stop this? I mean, because it's a bit yes minister sort of thing, because civil servants are dealing with civil servants, and there's enough stories going around about everyone looking after each other in the civil service. How can you stop it? Would you have to be involved at a ministerial level to double check what the agreements were, because you should be bomb-proof from any of that sort of shenanigans, and it could potentially be that. And then again, it could be completely innocent. It just seems that this is large amounts of money, and therefore it's a concern, isn't there? Yeah,
and I think you're absolutely right to ask that, absolutely. So in financial regulations, it's not something that goes to a minister. So the key parties in this are the accounting officers in government departments, and also the Office of Human Resources. So in terms of what can be done, I'm quite clear in my mind that there's sort of 2 or 3 things that need to be done and should be done, and that actually perhaps there has been a lack in the past. And my view is that the use of settlement agreements should not make up for a lack of process or a lack of awareness or any sort of go-to by any stretch of the imagination. By reaching figures of that level, like clearly that's not okay. So we need to be doing everything we can so that it's not having that impact on what is public money effectively. So the things that can happen and will happen will be, clearly there needs to be a clear guidance for accounting officers who are responsible for running and managing their departments and making management decisions and dealing with employees. And also that guidance needs to be available to the Office of Human Resources, because you can't just kind of pin it on one area. So the Public Services Commission should satisfy itself that guidance is sufficiently developed and communicated out. And then also there's this point about improved accountability throughout the public service, and steps on that point have already been taken. So there are aspects in all of that. And then thirdly, and it gets onto another topic of conversation about public service performance and accountability, but one of the things that got mentioned in the Tynwald debate in December was the establishment of an operational performance board at the centre with politicians on it, acknowledging that politicians can't be handling the staffing matters. Such issues to do with operations performance do and can become of political interest. So the operations performance board will have some oversight of some of the operational happenings from a central perspective across all of government, and that has never happened before.
Right. Finally, who funds this in the sense of which department? Is someone from X department, let's go, and where do they find the money themselves internally in their budgets, or is there a magical fund that's
There is no fund, so in the main they are found from departmental budget. So in a way that, if you imagine you are somebody who's having to sort of, promote that outcome, that decision, you're then having to make a decision as to look, actually, is this best? Is this best in, you know, for various interests in order to to take that course of action. And so that clearly, actually, that's probably quite helpful in determining, that sort of course of action. But it's not all for the same reasons. Multiple reasons could lead to
so
these.
The worst behind, do you think this won't be happening again with these sort of telephone numbers? Or is it like just to be one of those things that always comes along to get rid of people?
I think that the focus on having improved accountability and management in the public service will help. And I think the Public Services Commission, deciding that there needs to be some, guidance and just more openness and more transparency will help. I've already committed that in the Public Services Commission reports, they will report annually in future on these values. So I think
will it be
all
public
of this will
knowledge
help.
rather than FOI and these sort of things? Will we see this as a general, in transparency from government?
Yes, the Public Services Commission report is laid before Tin Mould.
Right.
It's been a delay in the report because I've required that it is kind of revamped to sort of actually reflect better on that oversight and accountability and the real role of the Public Services Commission, which should not be a proxy for the Office of Human Resources. So I've been behind the scenes working on sort of changes in that respect. So I think all of these things should help. So actually, the fact that this information is out there, as bad as it sounds,
it does sound bad.
Which is terrible, and it's it doesn't sit well with me. I'm very uncomfortable about it. But actually, it just means that it's quite right that some of the things that we are already looking at are being looked at. So that's my view, and those are some of the ways I think that we can seek to reduce those figures and that impact and the use of those in the future.